Mahendra, thank you very much indeed. That the messages that you have there, even though they're focused towards pharmacy, they're very much associated with medicine and nursing as well. We do have similar concerns with our tutors and our students and support and not support. So you've really covered that extremely well. Could I please ask the three speakers to take their seats here for the panel discussion, if you don't mind. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll have some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to all of you for your contributions. This is probably the most useful part of the morning, but only, it's called questions and answers. We can only have answers if we have questions. So who's going first? Please, yes. There's somebody over there. If you could just introduce yourself first with your background.
My name is Susan Hudson and I'm a lecturer in nursing in the Department of Nursing at IT Tralee, the Institute of Technology Tralee. And we introduced e-portfolios last year as a means of an assessment for practice placement for our third-year nursing students. And you suggested that the e-portfolio has the capacity to capture students' learning in a moment while in clinical. And I suppose one of the challenges to that is the whole ethical and legal situation around capturing evidence within clinical that a student could use potentially within the e-portfolio. And what I mean by that is examples, because we would love to see students maybe record engagement with preceptors or record engagements with patients and use that as evidence of their continuing development and competency. And I'm just wondering, have you any experience of tackling those issues, or any advice with regard to that, whether or not that's achievable?
It's a question to me. Yeah, is that working?
Yes.
Okay. This is quite a common question, and so I appreciate that there are concerns, but clearly if we were having a paper portfolio, it would be the same issue, and we never divulge patients' names or anything like that in a paper copy, and we wouldn't do that if it was an e-portfolio. So it's about the principles. It's about the learning that has taken place. It's not about the individual patient as such. And I think we have to be very careful with that, as we do with a lot of our technology and Facebook and all this sort of thing, that patient confidentiality has to be paramount. And when I say, I thought what you were going to say was about the issue of Wi-Fi access and things like that in the clinical areas. So I'm probably posing another point, but that is also, when we talk about contemporaneous records, clearly it's at a moment in time when it is appropriate to record what we want to record. So we certainly, I wouldn't suggest that because we don't have Wi-Fi in some of our clinical areas, that this isn't possible. I think I'm a great person, I'm a half-full person, as you probably gathered, and therefore I do believe it's how can we do this effectively. Sometimes it's not quite ideal, but you know, we have our phones, and I think we have apps. So there's ways of doing things that we perhaps haven't explored yet. So I think there are ways, we just need to find out the how to make it more effective.
Any other comments, David or Mahendra? No. Thank you. Gerardina?
Thanks, Henry. And this question is from Mahendra, and I'm just looking at the key takeaways. And I suppose one of the things is we need tutors that are fit for purpose. And how do we measure this? And did you give us advice in your presentation about how to measure this? Because this question is staring me now in the face, and I'm just wondering, well, how do we answer this question?
Yeah, so in terms of measuring the quality of placement, I assume that's what you're asking, so because you're getting both from the tutor perspective and the student perspective, is to measure against the competency standards, equip them and provide them with sufficient support, and in terms of they would then be assessed through various mechanisms of providing the quality throughout that placement. So that would come partly from the student in terms of the completion of, could be either via portfolios or via electronic submissions of their work, and that would be then assessed by trained tutors by the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, who would then measure against the standards that we would establish. So it would be done by the mentors and the tutors working together through the Royal Pharmaceutical Society.
Thank you. Anne?
Yes, just to add to that, I think the other thing that's really important is that we do work together and that we work with our clinical colleagues and our clinical coordinators to make sure the placement areas are appropriate. We all know there are some placements that we really don't want our students to experience. And, you know, I think what we should do is we should do audits, but we do that together. And by auditing periodically, we are aware then of if that placement is fit for purpose. It's quite, and I'm not suggesting that we take placements immediately out of the placement circuit. What I'm saying is if we find there are certain aspects of that experience that is not of the required standard, then we work with our clinical colleagues to ensure it is of the right standard. And what I would like to see personally is that if a placement is fit for students, it's fit for any student. So we audit once, regardless of which students are going into that placement area. And I think that is the way forward. And again, it's a way of working together across the professional groups.
There's a question or an addition over here. I think there might be another question about how we provide placements for the large number of students against how we assess quality, but we'll come to that in a minute. Walter.
First, I'd like to congratulate the three speakers on three really thought-provoking presentations, and also to Henry and his team for organising such a wonderful event. I'm Walter Cullen from the University College Dublin. My question relates to the issue of collaboration, which I suppose is one of the themes of today. And in particular, I'm struck by the fact that there's been historically very little collaboration between institutions around supporting clinical tutors to deliver optimal models of education to students, and also between healthcare disciplines. So, you know, we have a situation where, you know, kind of the nursing school, the medical school, the clinical therapy school will each have their own, you know, kind of networks of clinical tutors that they'll probably be doing broadly similar things with. And then across institutions, you'll have that sort of lack of collaboration kind of replicated further. So I suppose my very long question is, what's the future for collaboration, A, between disciplines within the same institution, and B, between institutions, in terms of perhaps putting in place a common support structure for clinical tutors, irrespective of discipline?
Thank you. David, do you want to take it?
I wonder if Alan wants to say something about the competencies first, because that was struck us, three of us yesterday, about one of the real strengths of your ePreP, and I think it comes to that, and then I'll say something afterwards if you want to.
Yeah, and I think we do have an opportunity here, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because big challenges are never easy. But I do believe, like I was saying earlier, starting off with the audit, if we can do one audit, we're saving time. If we can have, okay, this is my rose-coloured spectacles. If we can have teaching taking place in the clinical area by a medic on a ward round, but teaching not only the medical students, but the pharmacy students and the nursing students together, then I think that is a really good opportunity. And the same for the other professions. So we could actually use those teaching opportunities to actually develop more interprofessional learning than we've had before. We can do this as well in the laboratories, so in the clinical skills laboratories. And so we can have different groups of students together being taught around the bedside of the mannequin. So there's lots of ways we can actually do this. And I'm not saying we can do it all at once, but we can have small steps to achieve these things.
I think one of the things is we shouldn't force this for the sake of it, and I think sometimes interprofessional learning fails because we think if we shove all the students together and sort of decide to teach them jointly about diabetes or something, and forget the fact actually they're trying to learn different things perhaps about diabetes, then actually we can just turn people off. So I think we have to look to some of the shared core competencies that we all have as health professionals about teamwork, professionalism, communication, and make sure the teaching that we do jointly is appropriate. I think if we do it in the workplace, it's usually better than outside the workplace, just because you can focus on the patient journey then and make it more relevant. But it is something that we don't do very well, and often it isn't appropriate because you've got students of different experiences put together, and it can turn them off if we're not careful. So I think it needs to be done very carefully.
Can I just add to that as well? We're now in an environment where multidisciplinary work is very common, and it's going to be here to stay for a long, long time. The ePreP, the vision and the structure behind that of having the 3 competency levels assigned in terms of common goals, if it's a model that we can use from nursing, pharmacy and medicine, we're talking from the same hymn sheet in terms of the final outcome, really. And I think this is a perfect platform, unique in its sense. And I was just thinking how we would drive this forward in England and Wales and Scotland. But I think this is an absolute starter that should be taken up by. Certainly I'll be putting it back to the Royal Pharmaceutical Society in terms of can we develop a framework and work with ePreP to look at that model and how we can support that as well, really. So I think it's a key area that we need to galvanise, support, get opinions so that we can work together. And I think until we get that common focus, we're going to have these inconsistencies in terms of practice and quality and sharing.
Okay, thank you, David.
Can I ask a question? Is that allowed when I'm up here?
Yeah.
I'm just really interested to know, because we were helping sort of some of the ongoing development and the next stages from yesterday with the ePreP, and I would be really interested to know one or two of the students just share their experiences with them about using ePrep and how it's enhanced your placements. So I guess if it's enhanced your placements, I hope it has. But are there a couple of the students who've used it who might be prepared just to say that for a minute or two?
I can answer that question, no, because the website was launched only 10 days ago after an awful lot of development. So if we do have any students here who've used it, there is indeed one on already. There's one in the second row. Has anybody had a look? Anybody used it?
Sorry, ePortfolios, yes. Sorry, I apologise.
Yeah.
Yes, ePortfolios
Aoife?
in general, yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a second-year general nursing student here in UCC. And last March we started using PebblePad, and recently I'm on placement at the moment as well. And the new version of ePortfolio is online, and I think the upgrade of it, I think it's the 5th version of it, or it's a lot more beneficial to students. I think it's a lot more user-friendly. It's easier to upload files. You can scan your own. We still have our paper book as well as our online book. We can actually scan that in, so you have like a backup version if something, God forbid, would happen to your book. It's a lot easier to navigate around with creating your assets in relation to your references, and you can go back and add stuff to your references. Like I encountered something on placement this year that I also encountered last year, and I can link the two of them together using the Gibbs cycle, which is it's hugely beneficial for a student to go back and to reflect and say, well, I didn't do that last year, but I did it this year, and I hope to do it again in the future, which is fantastic in relation to the reflection. As you said, students don't usually like reflections because they create work, but they do help you in the long run. It's very much short-term misery, long-term gain. But definitely the portfolio is fantastic, and it should definitely be rolled out between all disciplines of nursing, medicine, pharmacy, whatever you're in, just to benefit learning, because we are very lucky to be able to study these things, and we are the future of nursing and health in this country. Hopefully we'll all get to stay, and it would be fantastic if we all had the same level of education and level of insight into our careers, because we only want to have the best, we only want to be the best that we can be. And this is definitely helping us because we can reflect and, as I say, get more educated, which is hugely important for our careers.
Okay, thank you. We know that we've been introducing and piloting e-portfolios in a number of disciplines, in a number of different institutions. And so at the risk of getting complete silence, could I ask some of our nursing students from Tralee, because you've been using this, the School of Nursing there used this from, I think, last year. And I know that it was pretty complex, a sort of very difficult learning curve initially, but then once people had found how to use it, it did seem to be really beneficial. Was that your experience as well? Yeah.
Initially, we were given kind of a week's preparation, and then we were on placement and we were expected to be able to use it, and we hadn't a clue, and we were out of the college, so we couldn't ask any, like we had to email to get information on how to do stuff. And to the very end, I have no idea exactly what my lecturer who was marking it could actually see, because he was opening stuff, but it wasn't in what he received. I had uploaded it. I could show him when I went in to him at my first meeting that I had uploaded it, because it showed on my side the upload, but he never received it. I don't know where it went, but he didn't get it.
Okay.
So in the final, I have no idea exactly what he got or what he didn't get.
Right. And I think that some of those problems have been ironed out with the updated version 5. And that's our project manager who stole what I was going to say, which is www.ePrePP.ie. We've got a remarkably helpful and full section on e-portfolios, how we've piloted it, how students and tutors have used it, and thank you very much indeed, certainly Theo to TCD, certainly to IEEE and UCC, and it's up there. One of the, and I know that my final med students who are sitting in the audience will be trying very hard not to talk about e-portfolios when I meet them at 11 o'clock in my office on Monday. Because at the moment there is a very sparse use of e-portfolio. But when we are helping our students apply for residencies abroad, particularly in North America, the detail that students have, or other practitioners have got to fill in about every module, about what you achieved, how many days you spent on this or that or the other, it becomes a nightmare to try and fill these application forms in. And so what we'd like to do is encourage people to start thinking about an electronic portfolio which stays with you as long as ever you want, but helps you do this day by day, week by week, rather than the massive amount of work that you have when you're putting an application in. We've got a question from the front, and then we've got one in the row there.
Thanks, Henry. Yeah. My name is Theo Ryan. I'm the practice educator in the School of Pharmacy in Trinity. Can everybody hear me? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So just to follow up on Aaron's point, we've created, I think it's 8 videos in total. So they're all 2-3 minutes. They should be a very useful resource for everybody. So that the real basics of how to log in to PebblePad, then it's a bit more advanced on what are the assets, what are resources. It explains that PebblePad terminology. So they'll be very useful to tap into. It then does the basics of what templates already exist, and then how to create and be more creative in creating your own templates that you need to tailor for your own use. So that should, as you say, Henry, create and be more accessible to more people.
Yes.
If I can just ask one question while I have the mic, if that's okay to the panel. This is open to anybody, but maybe particularly pharmacy. In the UK, have they considered, with regard to practice placements and students who have struggled, have you considered at all the opportunities that could be created with practice placements that are there to help remediate where students are having a particular difficulty with an aspect of practice? So do you have any specialty practice placements created at all, maybe where there's a greater focus on a particular aspect of the practice?
The issue with the UK at the moment is this is higher education institution driven. So the criteria for the different institutions could vary up and down the country. So you could have common criteria, but there could be variations within that as well. And this is the whole point of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society framework that we're developing at the moment, so that we could base, again, set criteria according to the framework and then support and work with the institutions on that basis. So it's a two-way system, but it's not competitive, it's not duplicative. It is more about ensuring that we identify where areas of improvement are required from the professional body and what kind of guidance and support the tutors and the placements require that would fit into the framework and then meet the competencies within that framework.
The answer from medicine is yes, we do have some placements where students with particular challenges can go, and that is the same in nursing as well. I am aware that I'm getting hungry. I'm also aware that a lot of you have started pretty early this morning to be here, so let's make the question here the last one, and thank you very much for your attention this morning.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm a fourth-year nursing student in IEEE, and we completed an e-portfolio last year in third year. Mine is more a comment than a question, and just to take the negativity away from it, we found it, now it was a tedious process, and we got over it, and we, now that we have completed it, we can see the benefits going forward. Do you know that it will especially now if they're trying to bring out continuous professional development, that we have this evidence and we have the artefacts and we can use it going forward, do you know. And like that, just, we'll say, falling down in competencies and reaching achievements, you can lay out an action plan before you start the placement and highlight your weaknesses and what you need to work on. And, you know, it gives you a platform to set out your strategy and your aims and goals, basically.
Sarah, thank you.
Thank you.
The e-portfolio use is becoming increasingly common. We do have one last question towards the back, if that's okay.
Hi, Stephen McInerney. I'm a final year pharmacy student in UCC. Now, at the risk of sounding a bit negative, in terms of like we started this year getting workshops on CVs, and we were told from the very start that an employer might look at your CV for 30 seconds before he decides to kind of not look at it ever again. And with the amount of work that seems to have to go into making these e-portfolios, is there a difference between how an employer will look at CV and just brush it away and having to go through lots and lots and lots and lots of project work to see what the person has studied and what they've learned?
I'll start.
Okay, yeah.
I understand what you're saying about the CV, and one of the most important things that we said to students is make sure there are no spelling mistakes, because sometimes that means it is on that pile as opposed to the pile that we want to look at in a bit more detail. So it's your CV is very important and is part of your portfolio. But one of the things I mentioned in my talk was about the Achieve More, and we find that employers ask about the project and their involvement, ask about their involvement with the team, with the group work and that sort of thing, what they learnt, leadership skills, as opposed to details about the project. So I think it's really important that you have key things there that you want employers to pick up, bearing in mind they will see hundreds of CVs. And, you know, they can't look in detail at every one of those, but they will have a pile that they want to look at in more detail, and they will do that. So the other thing about when you're going to, I get on my soapbox ever so often, be careful with Facebook, because sometimes employers now, the first thing they do is look at somebody's profile on Facebook and what people have been putting on Facebook. Sorry, that was just
Okay, one last desperate question. Over here. Just shout out.
Is actually a follow-on from that question. How long has ePortfolio kind of been used in England? About 12 years, roughly?
Well, I think if you're talking about portfolio, not necessarily...
No, I'm talking about the ePortfolio that
yes.
the employers will be looking at.
Yeah.
How long was it after it was initially started, did it take for the employers to start really looking at them? Like, we're at the very beginning of ePortfolio. Are employers going to read through 20 pages of all this e-portfolio when there's a page of a CV next to it? How long does it take for the employers to get on board?
I don't think you're going to see employers reading through your e-portfolio in entirety. They're just not going to do that. They haven't got the capacity to do that.
So to get a job, it's really...
You need to be able to put the key points in, you know, a summary, if you like, of what you have achieved. But also bearing in mind, you will have a transcript of training. And the transcript is really important. So the e-portfolio should should be seamless, and this is what you are required to do by your professional bodies. The transcript is there as well. So there are lots of elements of this, and it's not just one thing.
And so the person to read it should be you before the interview rather than the employer.
But
David.
the crucial thing is it might not help get to the interview, but when you're at the interview, if you can talk passionately about how you've used the e-portfolio, engage with it, it's helped you reflect, it's helped you, you know, improve as a practitioner, then you nail the job. That's the crucial thing.
Yeah, I just don't know how.
Okay. Can I just, my pleasure is finally to thank our three speakers this morning. I hope that you've had a perspective across disciplines and certainly across experience.